Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. This week we have Zach Chapman, editor of Time Travel Tales, author of Ghost Farm, and creator of the upcoming House of Blood anthology comics series. Welcome to the show.
Hey, well, in that last one, you've got a story in there.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to do. We're just waiting for some art to come back.
And then maybe if there's more, we'll have more stories.
Yeah.
Horror comics.
So, Zach, what's your history with horror movies? Horror, more in general, but specifically horror movies.
Well, I like horror movies. Now I probably enjoy watching horror movies more than any other genre, just because I feel like they're easier to watch, and maybe I just kind of enjoy them more than, like, a failed horror movie is generally of a lot better quality than a failed science fiction or other genre movie.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that is.
How about growing up? Did you watch a lot of horror movies growing up? Were you allowed to in your house? What was the situation there?
We were allowed to. When I was growing up, I was kind of scared of a lot of horror movies. I mean, I loved horror cartoons, like, horror cartoons, like the parts in Fantasia with the devil.
Okay.
Really like that, like when I was very young.
Yeah. And
then Scooby-Doo, whenever I was at friends' houses or something and I saw Scooby-Doo, I thought that was like the coolest thing.
Uh-huh.
But then the movies would scare me. They tended to scare me. So one that I remember is the 80s Blob.
The Blob? You saw that as a little kid?
Yeah, I saw that as a little kid.
That's a really good movie.
I mean, I don't remember it super well, other than, like, it was extremely violent or graphic. It was pretty gory from what I remember.
Yeah. It's been a couple of years, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of scared the shit out of me. The first scene, I think I was in, like, 3rd grade when Scream came out. I'm not sure what year it came out, but
96.
Well, I would have been 6 years old. Yeah. So
Jesus.
Yeah, so I was very young. I was actually really young at the time. And my sister brought home the VHS tape, and, like, I was, like, watching the first scene, and it just scared the shit out of me.
That's a great opening scene with Drew Barrymore.
I mean, in retrospect, yeah, it's really good, but then that just scared the shit out of me as a kid, so...
How about your parents that you grew up with? Did they watch? Were they into horror at all?
My dad's like a horror fan. Like when it comes to books, like Stephen King, he's read some Joe Hill. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's like kind of the only thing, because I like all genres. But my dad doesn't like any kind of fantasy, any kind of science fiction, anything like what he would deem weird. But for whatever reason, he likes, horror. So, and he's a big Twilight Zone kind of guy. He's in his 70s, so he grew up on that stuff.
And you were, like, when I met you a couple years ago, you were deep into sci-fi, right? Like, I think you just fairly recently started to watch more horror movies. Because you were, like... big Star Wars.
Yeah,
sci-fi.
I mean,
You're a sci-fi writer.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I still
future sci-fi writers of America.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a Scientologist actually.
Uh-huh.
To be clear, yeah, I like all genres, but I drift back and forth between horror, fantasy, and sci-fi like regularly.
Yeah.
And I like stuff that mixes the genres together, like Alien, or movies like Aliens, where it's definitely science fiction, but then it turns into a horror movie like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So,
and you can see that even in your writing as of recently, like you're writing horror comics, but you're also writing sci-fi comics. Although that your what's the name of their sci-fi one on Mars?
A Haunting on Mars.
Haunting on Mars. That's sci-fi with horror, kind of like Alien.
I mean, that's actually as much of a horror as it is science fiction. It's basically, my idea for that was to do a haunted house, like the haunted house genre as it was created, I guess, by Shirley Jackson, with the tropes and all of that, but do that as a science fiction cyberpunk type thing. Yeah. So I just smashed those two genres together. So it's like equal parts, 1-to-1 kind of thing.
So what is your favorite horror movie of any genre, of any decade, or subgenre of any decade? What would you say your favorite horror movie is?
I don't know. That's really hard to say. But
you're in the confessional right now.
I know. I really like The Innocents.
Okay.
I think that's a really, really good movie. I think it's scary. I think it's better than its source material.
What was the source material again?
Turn of the Screw.
Oh yeah, Turn of the Screw. Right, we read that. We read that for a previous podcast.
And I think it's kind of boring.
Yeah, I was getting mixed up with The Yellow Wallpaper, which
the Yellow Wallpaper is really good.
Yeah, The Yellow Wallpaper is good. Okay. So The Innocents would be you'd say that was your favorite.
Yeah, and they did they did a adaptation of it last year on Netflix. But it wasn't great. It was okay.
It was called The Innocents?
No, it was by the same people who did The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Okay. All right.
And they adapted the Innocents, and they it was very loose adaptation, very similar to that first season, but it just wasn't as good as that first season.
Okay. All right, Zach. So you have said that you've come on the show to confess your sin that you've never watched Friday the 13th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Step 1 in the confession is to be contrite. Are you contrite? Are you sorry about that?
Not particularly sorry. Well, I don't know if I'm more sorry now having seen it.
Okay. All right, and just to let the 1 or 2 listeners know, Zach is known as Hot Take Chappie. So he will kill all your gods. He has true. The hottest takes you've ever heard of.
I have a handlebar mustache.
He is a villain in every sense of the word. He's a troll. So with that said, the opinions of the guest are not necessarily the opinions of the podcast.
Oh, what is this movie just a gold standard for you?
Not for horror? Well, okay, to be fair, I've never been a Friday the 13th fan. I obviously has important part of the history in horror. Mm-hmm. And there's some actual individual movies within the series that are great, like 3 and I think 6 that I really enjoy.
Is 3 better than 1?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 1 is not the best out of the whole series. It's just like where it begins, in my opinion, of course. But regardless, Zach was not a fan. We saw it together.
No, I was talking a lot of shit. Like, I did enjoy it. I think that movie it starts off really bad. It starts off like it's just gonna be a shitty Halloween ripoff, because it has the first person POV, and people get murdered, but you can't really see what's going on. Like in Halloween, it's like from a child's perspective, and it's just a really cool going through the house and then the murder. That's just a really cool opening scene. Yeah. And this feels like, having recently watched Halloween and compared that opening scene, it's like it's like a shitty version of it. It's not. It just seems like it's not well lit. I always complain about lighting, but kind of as a joke. But like for real, it's not clear what's happening, and it's not like it's a. It is a who done it kind of. It is, but the actions of like the murders are not clear. Like the suspense isn't super clear. Yeah. Like I don't know. It's just a very muddy first scene, but it does get better as it goes. I will.
All right, so let's talk about that a little bit. Friday the 13th came out in 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, who Gene Siskel famously called one of the most despicable creatures that has ever infested the film industry after this movie came out.
And so it was in response to this movie.
It was in the review of this movie. He called that's what he said about the director. Written by Victor Miller, starring Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees. And actually, in that same review, Gene Siskel gave out Betsy Palmer's address because he wanted readers of his column to write to her and tell her what a bad idea it was to be in this movie. What
Dude.
An asshole, right? Luckily, it was the wrong address, but the intent was there.
Well, I mean, luckily for her, it was the wrong address. But what about the people whose address it was? They got a bunch of random ass hate mail.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, exactly.
I'm really curious as to what his review of Halloween was.
He famously did not like horror movies at all, so I'm sure it was shit. And if I'm sure I'll hear if I was wrong, but what I think happened with Halloween was that Ebert gave it a bad review, and then years later came back and said I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this movie had some merit, and it's been a historical thing, whatever. But I don't know. Both of them were not fans of horror movies, so they just always talk shit about it. Also starring Adrienne King as Alice, Janine Taylor as Marcy, and some nobody who's never done anything named Kevin Bacon as Jack. Kevin Bacon is pretty good in the horror field with movies. He's got this one. He's got Tremors,
Mm-hmm.
Stir of Echoes. Have you ever seen Stir of Echoes?
No.
That's like a mid to late 90s horror, kind of like a ghost haunted house sort of thing. But it was really good. I really like that one. You should check that one out. And then also he did Hollow Man.
Yeah,
Hollow Man holds up. I saw it within the last year and a half or so before the pandemic. But it's rapey as fuck. He is really rapey.
I don't know if I want to watch Hollow Man, but that other one you're telling me...
Stir of Echoes?
Yeah,
I'd recommend it. And he's actually in pre-production right now on Toxic Avenger reboot, being written and directed by Macon Blair.
What? Who is he gonna play?
It doesn't say yet. I tried to find out, but it'd be pretty cool if he was Toxie.
Oh, no. They gotta get someone younger to play Toxic Avenger.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Or someone big.
Well, right? Maybe he could... Yeah, I don't know.
I don't want it to just be like a CG guy, right? I don't know.
I don't think it will be. So, let's talk about this movie. Starts off, like you were saying, in 1958 or sometime in the 60s. I don't remember exactly when. Oh, yeah, 58. Right off the bat.
I mean, right off the bat, you're assaulted with the shitty music. If you're gonna... This movie has bad music. Compare this to any Carpenter movie.
Yeah.
And it's like they took the opposite approach musically to it. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. The only thing that's suspenseful is the ch-ch-ch. Yeah. And that's arguably not even music.
So, with sound effect.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, right? Like, you were born in 90 or 90?
Yeah, 90.
So, obviously, the 80s passed you up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can be born in the 90s and still appreciate the 80s. There's a lot of people do that. You don't generally care for a lot of 80s horror movies. It feels like
80s slashers in particular.
80s slashers. Okay, that's fair, right? Because you like The Thing. That's a slasher.
The Thing is not a slasher.
What? It is a slash. They go out. They get killed one by one by the alien. What? How is that? It's Halloween on
survival, ice. Where's the one female survivor? Who's the dude in the mask?
I'm not saying it's your typical slasher, but I think it's got some slasher bones.
I mean, I think slasher bones. You can say Alien, which I love.
Alien is a slasher.
Yeah, Alien is a slasher.
Yeah.
In space, but it's also really
is on ice.
I mean,
I'm the host of this show.
Oh, okay, all right. All right.
But so I was gonna say that. So I grew up. I was born in '82. I grew up in the '80s. My brother Ruben, who had passed away a couple years ago, but he was really huge into horror films. That's where I got my love of horror from. And then my middle brother Kenny, like, so we would watch horror movies. We lived in 3 flat, and he lived in the basement, so it's really creepy down there. Dark, cold always. And then so we would scare each other by turning off all the lights in the middle of the night, or we're in Chicago, so it gets dark during the winter really quickly, and then just going. We're like, stop it, stop! Even though we knew it was just our brother, one of the brothers or whatever. But so I have this connection to this movie, even though I'm not the biggest Jason fan. That sound and the music really connects with me. Now, somebody who's literally just seeing for the first time doesn't have that connection, so I completely understand it. But you knew, it's like in pop culture, right? You knew.
Yeah.
Before.
No, I think that part, that kind of ambient bit works enough. I mean, not in comparison to your Carpenter soundtrack, which works.
Well, synth, like always, synth over everything, right?
Yeah, it works much better. But there was a lot of like actual music.
Yeah, there was
that they did.
Even at the end, which we'll get to, but there was like a really soft, beautiful, melodic music at the end, which helps to kind of put you in a safe place. And we'll get there. But yeah, I see what you're saying about that. So as you were saying, it is, and the writer has admitted to this being basically a ripoff of Halloween with that intro.
Well, it's like a ripoff of Halloween, but does he also cop to it being kind of a ripoff of Psycho, or?
Yeah, because the changing of the early killing of the protagonist. And then also, I hadn't even thought about this, but I was watching the documentary, Camp Crystal Lake Memories or something like that. It's like a 6-hour documentary.
Whoa.
I only watched the first half an hour because it was specifically about, they do about half an hour, 45 minutes on each movie.
Yeah.
So, and they were talking about, he also flipped, so in the Psycho, spoiler alert, right?
Yeah, it's the mother, father, or it's the mother, son. Now it's the...
Yeah. So it's like, but that's all art.
But that's
borrowing.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's my favorite part about the movie.
Yeah.
I think I like that a lot. Like that's what I was saying. Like this movie starts off pretty bad, and I think it just gets better and better as it goes. And so you get to the end, and the end is great.
I agree with you. I agree with you a little bit. The ending is great. We'll get to that. The middle is where it slows down, because that's just let's get rid of these teenagers one by one as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And set up the cool kills. But the beginning I liked because it was a bit suspenseful. It's really dark, which it's supposed to be. And you got that. I always love the point of view of the killer. Halloween's my favorite movie, so that's ingrained in me to look for that. And I liked the slow-mo on the killer. Slow-mo on the kills. I know it's cheesy or whatever. They didn't. It's a low-budget movie. Mm-hmm. They said that they didn't have the budget to do those 2 kills. So you just see the slow-mo, and in your mind, you make up what happens. But for you, it sounds like you did not enjoy that beginning.
Yeah. Nah.
Specifically those kills, or the whole beginning?
Yeah, specifically those kills, and then onto the setup too. Is like the setup. It starts getting a little bit better, but like, the derpy girl going into town, and they're like, "Don't go to Camp Crystal Lake." They call it Camp Blood or whatever, and
Camp Blood's a cool name.
I mean, that they probably should have called this movie Camp Blood.
So all right, so we're in 1958. The two counselors are killed. Then we flash forward to present day, which it doesn't say what present day is, but we're going to assume it's 1980. We meet the character Annie. She hitches a ride with this creepy driver, tow truck driver.
Yeah.
Who? What does he do that's creepy?
He just grabs her ass when he's like, "Oh, let me help you onto the." No, he didn't even say that. It's just like an automatic thing that would, I guess, happen in the 80s. It's like, "Oh, well, you're hitching a ride. I'm gonna grab your ass by helping you, my fingers are in air quotes, helping you onto the truck or whatever.
Yeah, that's... yeah, there's a lot of problematics. There's actually... But besides that and some attitudes and one particular character, Ralph... No, not Ralph. Ned. He pretty much encompasses a majority, I would say, of the problematic shit in there. Because when you think about it, like for an 80s movie, anything pre like 2006 is pretty problematic.
Yeah.
But there's not too much problematic shit in here that I can think of, and we'll call it out when we get there. Then my favorite line is, "You're an American original." This part of the movie, it's kind of not very plot heavy, right?
No.
They're getting the camp ready to open up in the next 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Because people, since the original killings of 58, they haven't been able to keep people going because there's been deaths every time they try to open up the camp. So they're trying to get it ready, and then the owner of the camp leaves. And I believe for a while we're supposed to believe that he may be the killer.
Yeah, because he has the same vehicle that Jason's... Okay, so he has the same...
There's two vehicles that are similar, and the killer could be driving it.
Yeah, but you actually see the killer's hand, like, before they've killed anyone.
Yeah.
And you can see a big ring on it. And you know it's, like, not a...
The ring was supposed to be reminiscent of a woman, like, because a woman would wear a wedding ring there. But you're right, it does look like man hands, right?
No, I thought I was like, well, it's clearly there. I mean, I knew the twist going in.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I know that's the killer because I know her. You know, she's wearing a ring on her hand. So I don't know.
There's actually.
I thought it was cool though. I thought it was cool to put that on there because then you're like, well, who would wear that ring like that?
There's a couple of cool things towards the end. I'll bring up again about the hands because there's a funny, not outtake, but pretty bad screenshot of the hands. And then also there was a subplot that never made it into the movie where they didn't even film it. They took it out at script. In the script form, but the killer was supposed to be they were supposed. All right, you know what? Everybody's seen this fucking movie. The killer is Jason's mom. Okay, so she was supposed to have lost either one or two of her fingers in the attack from 1958 when she killed those two counselors. So then in the movie, when you see her hand, the fingers were supposed to be missing, and it was supposed to be a subtle cue that that's her.
Yeah.
But they never. They took it out of the script, and so you just left with that shot of the ring on the hand, and it looked like man hands. But
so the other thing that structurally I was confused about and curious throughout the whole movie until the very end until about halfway through, is I knew the twist, and it's not. There's no setup for the twist. So you're not delivered any information until the twist happens. So it's not actually a twist. Like the only reason it's a twist is because everyone knows this character is the killer of the series. Jason Voorhees is the killer of the series. In this movie, it's not a twist. It's a character that's killing other characters, and then when we'll get to it, but it's not a twist because you're never thinking that it's someone else, and it's not set up like this character. You haven't seen this character at any point before then, except for their hand. She's not even mentioned.
The only reason you accept it is because a little boy needs to have a mom,
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, fine. But if it was like his uncle, or his aunt, you'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You never mentioned a sister, so I get that. But what I think, and we've had this conversation multiple times, specifically about Halloween, not getting into it with you, but you tend to fault it for or are critical of its faults as if it were made today.
Yeah.
Right. But obviously this movie came out in 1980. So when the movie came out in 1980, the franchise wasn't there. So audiences of the time could be surprised. it's kind of like Star Wars and Darth Vader, right? I never watched any of the Star Wars movies up until like when I started dating my wife, so it was like 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like what, mid-20s, and but I knew through pop culture that I am your father thing,
Yeah.
right? So that surprise was taken out of it for me. So I understand what you're saying there, but I can't fault it for when it came out why everybody would love it, because that turn. I'm sure when you saw that turn, did you already know?
I've had it so ingrained in me. I
Don't
think
even-
I was surprised, but I
Yeah.
don't, because I watched all that stuff at such a young age.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So, but I think it's similar there. All right.
pre-internet.
Yeah. All right. So Annie is picked up. She gets halfway to the camp, which is kind of dumb. And then she's picked up by another person in the Jeep. And then she's not seen or heard from again until we find
Well,
out.
she gets killed on screen. Actually.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
She gets her throat slit.
Yeah.
And that effect looked really good. I thought it looked really good.
Well, yeah, like I thought most of the effects were great, and that's because the special effects were done by horror god Tom Sex Machine
Savini.
Yeah, he's done Dawn of the Dead, Creepshow 1 and 2, The Prowler, The Burning. Like everybody knows him; he's a legend. And there wasn't one practical effect or special effect in this movie that I really had a problem with. The only thing that seemed a bit like it brought me out a little bit is the blood when Kevin Bacon's character gets it, because it splurts out, and
and that just wouldn't happen in real life.
I actually don't fucking know if it would or not, you know. But what happened was that they were under the bed. That's why I love practical effects, because it's you like have to think of the craft and the magic that goes into it.
Yeah.
So Kevin Bacon is kind of crouching under the bed with his head sticking out.
I can only imagine.
And then they have a fake torso. It only goes up to like right below his pectoral muscles or whatever, his chest. And then they have a tube of blood running out, and they're just supposed to, with one of those balls that you squeeze, like a rubber ball, squeeze the blood when the arrow comes through the back. And that piercing with the skin stretching.
I mean, it looks cool.
It looks really good. So they were supposed to just squeeze the ball, and it was supposed to come out normally, but the ball got disconnected from the plastic tubing, so the guy had to think quickly, and he just put it in his mouth and just blew. So that's why you see that whole burst of blood.
Yeah.
And he thought that the director was going to hate it but Sean Cunningham was like, no, fuck yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So that's just to say that the special effects were great. So I want to talk about some of the people that we think could be the killer, right? So we have the owner of the camp. We have Ned. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. Ralph the weirdo.
Yeah.
He's the doomsayer, right? He's the one who, like, in all the movies afterwards, he's like, don't go down that. Don't go there. You're going to get killed. They even did it in Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
You know, so we think he could be the killer. And then I think further on in the movie, Bill could possibly be the killer. And that's what you're saying. Like, we're never set up to think that it's his mind.
Yeah, I think that's why structurally it's a bit it's a bit weird, because it's like it's almost like a whodunit, but the person is not in the room. You know, structurally you would introduce all the characters, including the killer, and then it would be up to the audience to guess who the killer is.
Yeah.
Except in this movie, they do that, but the killer is not introduced to the audience, so the audience doesn't get to guess who it is. So I think it's actually not like particularly. It's odd, because it's kind of cool in that you'd be like, well, I literally didn't see that coming, because how could you have seen it coming at the time? Like, now with pop culture, you will inevitably know this will be spoiled for you. But like at the time, no one would have been able to predict this, because, you know, she kills and then there's the explanation, and it's fucking weird and cool.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, Betsy Palmer was kind of begging or, petitioning Sean Cunningham to add scenes, at least like when they're driving through town, have her waving at somebody just so you see her on screen or interacting in the very minimal.
I think they should
to
have
do that, but he wanted to keep it a complete surprise, and so. And I meant to say that Cunningham got financing for the film based solely on the title, Friday the 13th. He had no script. He had no idea what it was going to be. He just had the title, and he took out an ad in Variety. And the producers of Last House on the Left, who Cunningham had worked with, 10 years earlier, or 8 years earlier, they saw the idea and reached out to him and wanted to work with it. So he sold it. He got his budget of $550,000 based solely on the name.
Wow. So seems like that budget went mostly to. I mean, yeah. It's not like there's location. I'm thinking just the kills are not like overly. They're not crazy kills. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think that would bust the budget. Maybe the actors.
Actually, the actors were paid pretty minimally, except for Betsy Palmer, who was the biggest name.
Yeah.
Biggest name star. In my previous episode with Andrew, we were talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula, where the majority of Coppola's budget for that went to design, to costumes. And you can tell.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
You can absolutely tell. In this movie, I don't know where the budget went, because it is low budget filmmaking in its greatest sense. There's not a set piece that you're like, wow. There's not a big name actor other than Betsy Palmer, but I don't think she was that big of an actress. I don't know if she was in anything before that other than like Playhouse stuff or something like that. So I don't know where the budget went, to be honest. But special effects, definitely.
Yeah.
I would think so, because Savini had already done.
I mean, he was a big name in the field.
Yeah, he already done Dawn of the Dead and other things. So.
Well, I think it's actually more about the kills in this one than like if you look at the evolution of slashers. Like I'm not a slasher person. I don't really watch a lot of slashers or enjoy those movies, but I guess if you look at the evolution of that genre, this is kind of like where it becomes about the kills specifically, because like in Halloween, in the first Halloween, he doesn't really do anything crazy kill wise. He's stabbing people with a butcher knife, right? That's it. I mean, that's how he kills people. And before that, the kills in, like, I guess the proto slasher would have been Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And those kills are all done off camera, with, either a hammer or a meat cleaver or a chainsaw. So, and those are not seen. But these kills in this movie, it's not just a butcher knife. It's like weird shit. Like it's like
arrows, but we don't see them get killed by the arrows, but we do see that.
Well, you see Kevin Bacon get stabbed through the back of the knife and out the front of his neck with the arrow. Yeah. And that was like so there are some kills that are set up that are kind of just like they're kind of boring, but that one's like very like I don't know, maybe at the time it could have been extremely shocking, because you don't see anything like that in Halloween.
Yeah. I think it obviously Halloween wasn't the first slasher, but what it did show is that slashers could be profitable, extremely profitable. A budget $300,000, and they've made they made hundreds of millions of dollars back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But you have things like Peeping Tom, which was a British movie back in the 60s that did a slasher type role, and they were showing on-screen kills, pretty cool on-screen kills as well. But what Halloween did is it opened up the floodgates to other people wanting to try low-budget filmmaking, slasher style. And then Friday the 13th kind of solidified it. This is your formula. Go forth.
Yeah.
And do plenty. Because that opened it up afterwards, and then you have everything else coming. The high profile stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play later on in the decade, but you have the little stuff in between too, like Edge of the Axe and I can't think off the top of my head, but it just opens that genre up to everybody. And then that's where the 80s is known for horror, because low budget. I think Friday the 13th was responsible for a big part of that decade. Getting back to the movie, we didn't talk about Ned too much. Ned is a piece of shit. Right? Yeah. He comes out wearing a Native American headdress and trying to do a rain dance, I believe, or something like that. Complete douchebaggery. The rest of the character, even the main Adrienne King is Alice, so even her, I didn't really connect with her very much. Although she did have the fight scene between her and Mrs. Voorhees at the end. Yeah. It's the last 20 minutes of the movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty long.
I know you don't like Family Guy, right?
Yeah. It's like
the chicken fight.
The chicken fight. Yeah,
it's amazing. It goes on forever. But the rest of these characters are pretty forgettable. I didn't connect to most of them. Don't care about any of them dying. It's kind of like, let's get this rolling, you know. Did you connect with any of them?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I in a way, you kind of like the Ned guy just because he's annoying. On screen, you're like.
No, I definitely wanted him to die immediately.
I know, but it's like you want him to die in a way, and that's fun, right? The other characters, they were fine. None of them are they all just exist in the space. They're all just doing things that teenagers would do. And this seems like before, I know part of the slasher genre is to kill teenagers that are, misbehaving, but none of these teenagers are particularly misbehaving except for Ned. I mean, yeah, they have sex, but that's a pretty typical normal thing to do, especially when you're away at summer camp. Yeah, they're not drinking, they're not being disruptive, and in fact, a cop comes and he's he's kind of grilling them, and they're being really nice to this cop. Yeah. I mean, they all kind of seem like pretty good kids except for Ned. Yeah, and he's just misplaced asshole. Yeah, he's just a. They all kind of seem aware. They actually make comments, while he's alive. That this guy kind of sucks, and it's the movie is aware of Ned. Yeah. And it's a shame because he gets killed off screen. He's the first camper to die, and he's besides Annie, but I guess she's not a camper because she didn't make it to camp yet. Yeah. So you see her death, but you don't see his. I mean, there's a reveal with him, and he's when Kevin Bacon and his girl are having sex on the bed, he's dead and on the top bunk. So it's kind of a cool reveal. Yeah. But it's not that to me was Halloween-ish, where it's they do the revealing the bodies. They do it later on in the movie. That's another rip-off point of it. And we do get to see a pretty good shot of bacon butt. Yeah, and she grabs it. She grabs her like a chunk of bacon butt. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So I just didn't really care too much for the characters. If we were to do a scene by scene recount of this movie, it would just be, and then this person died, and then this person died, and they're not really moving the plot forward here. This is the plot. We are at the camp, and they're dying. Well, I mean, I would have that same criticism that you just said. I would have that for Halloween. And thank you for joining the podcast. A little bit, but I don't like that you said that. So we're gonna move on. You don't like that I made a good point, but I mean, it has a better lead. So I think that a lot of that is on the actor themselves. Yeah, so. I'm gonna pause right here so that I can put a really good point about this later on and when I'm editing. So, and that's what I have to say about that. Yes, Miguel, you are correct. Yeah. So essentially, we the campers get whittled down, right, until it's just Alice, and she's running around on her own. I think Bill's been killed at this point. The owner's been killed at this point.
And so she's running around for help, and she runs into Mrs. Voorhees. And this is literally the first time we're seeing her. We even know she exists. And I got to hand it to Betsy Palmer. Like, she is creepy from the moment we see her. She's got that smile, that fake smile. He's showing the chiclets. And I don't know. I wish I was able to go back and see this movie for the first time without knowing what I know.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I would like to know how, because you already knew what you hadn't seen it, but you knew that she was the killer. I want to know somebody who didn't know what their automatic thing is. I think in this day and age, you see somebody showing up in the last third of a movie, they're going to be the killer. I don't know how the people in the 1980 audiences reacted to that.
Well, I think that my guess is that you see this girl's just been terrorized. The main character's just been terrorized, and then it's almost like a Deus Ex Machina coming in to save the day, and it's this mid to late 50s lady who's unassuming. She comes in and you're like, oh, thank God. Like, it's someone's here that, that this person couldn't possibly be the killer, right? Because it's just like, doesn't fit the killer stereotype in any way at all. Like, she's wearing like
dope ass sweater.
Like this
like a
crocheted knit
like a knit
sweater. And she
typical
just seems,
all-American apple pie mom.
Yeah, she seems like a sweet old lady that's, well, maybe she's racist, but...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But, and then she starts saying weird shit, right? So I think my guess, and this is like the clever part, is like, you're thinking, oh, this person's here and she's being comforting to this character, like, oh, don't worry, I'm not afraid of whatever happened. And then she sees the dead body and she's like, oh, what a shame. And you're like, oh shit, this person is weird.
And then she just goes off on a soliloquy.
Yeah.
Or like a monologue. It's what in a comedy or something like that, where you see somebody who's like talking to you and then they just look off to the right.
Yeah.
And they're not there. And then she just goes off and tells her story.
Yeah. The main character could have just left at that point and would have.
Yeah, it's kind of like in if anybody plays the game Dead by Daylight, which we play a lot, when the killer is mooring somebody.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to be right there, like if you were not the person being killed, you could just run away.
Yeah.
But that particular scene is just happening and nothing can happen. It's just locked in animation.
Yeah.
That's what it was. She could have walked away, but it's very effective. She is a very good actress. She did what was asked of her in this movie, and even though she didn't want to be in it, she's repeatedly said this was a piece of shit movie, and she only took it. The script was shit, and she only took it because she needed a new car. She said that repeatedly.
Yeah.
And she's since passed away, but she still showed up and did her job.
I mean, she's literally doing a Norman Bates.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see her because she starts saying, Mommy, kill them. Yeah. Like, and that's cool. Like, that's just like a cool... And she responds to him. She's like, yeah, I'll take care of it, or whatever, and that's cool.
And when she's saying that, kill them, Mommy.
Yeah. That's
where the composer got the sound for. So that that's where that comes from. And by the way, I didn't even mention. I think it's Henry Manfredini is the composition. Harry Manfredini. He also did House, which you saw. We were just talking about.
He did the music in the House?
He did music for House, and he also did Slaughter High. So
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. But so then there's a protracted scene of them just going at it, back and forth, like fighting. And this is the best part of the movie.
Yeah, aside from the stinger, the very end.
Besides from the very end. Which, have you ever seen... okay, so Sleepaway Camp is another movie that came out.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well...
Sounds like a slasher movie.
It is definitely a slasher movie. Came out after this, but it has another similar ending that you'd never think would happen. Mm-hmm. Or, just a very surprise ending. It reminded me of that. But so this protracted scene of them fighting, going back and forth, this was the suspense part for me. Because you said earlier that the movie got better as it went along.
Yeah.
So what did you think about this part of the movie?
Oh, yeah, no, there are some clumsy choices throughout this part and earlier too, where like a character will just be like walking in pitch black woods and it's all natural lighting and they have a flashlight, and so you just
it's very hard to see a lot of this movie.
Yeah, and it's not like it's done on purpose. It's not like a purposeful like.
You don't think so? You don't think that they made a movie about being in camp and would light it low?
I mean,
you don't give them that much credit.
I think it's just budgetary reasons. They just didn't have the lighting to pull it off. They were using natural lighting, and I mean it just kills some of the clarity. You know, I think that you can obscure things, but like you still want to have some clarity in. I mean, now when movies are shot like that, right? You'll have like you'll have the hard stark contrast between like black and the lighting, and there's just much more control. And probably digitally they can correct a lot of that stuff. The other thing we were watching, and I don't know if this is true for all of the transfers for this film, because there's probably much better transfers, but we watched it you rented it on Amazon.
Yeah,
right?
I rented it on Amazon. Well, to be fair, I don't like giving Bezos money. I had a credit.
Yeah.
I had credit that I was able to use. Also, I have the box that came out.
But you didn't want to open the box.
But I didn't want to open the box. So that's why we rented it.
My God.
But yeah, I don't know what the transfer was.
I would say that...
I thought it was high definition, though.
It was high definition, but that doesn't...
4K transfer or anything.
I mean, there are still high definition transfers that could be better than that because for whatever reason, Amazon, whenever they stream stuff, the transfers, like the actual like film transfers that they have are shit. I watched The Cell, which is a beautiful movie.
Amazing movie, yeah.
Yeah, but if you watch it on Amazon, it looks like shit. It looks terrible. And it doesn't have to do with streaming quality or anything like that. It has to do with like the native transfer that they use, which is like some ripped off of some crappy DVD that they did way back when.
But I think the lighting that they do for this movie, it does. It's bad in some parts, especially in the daylight or the low light, like dusk or dawn. I think it's dusk. Parts of it are kind of bad, hard to see. But at night, that's when it comes to light. That's when it becomes good. So there's a couple scenes. There's one where the owner is running up to the camp and it's completely black and all you see is his yellow, he's wearing a rain jacket and he's running up towards the camera. I thought that was a pretty cool shot. There was another, and then that's where he meets Betsy, Mrs. Voorhees, and that's how she kills him.
And that kill is not great.
No, that kill is just like a shot to she gets him with a harpoon or just like a whatever knife to the gut or something. But then there's another one where a character is running from the woods into a building and the building is centered and it's completely dark outside and there's a red center and two lights on the either side of the door.
Yeah.
That shot was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they were, maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but they're kind of building into this like low lighting in the beginning where you can't see anything and the movie just keeps getting darker. I don't know. That's what I was taking from it.
Well, and that makes sense. It all takes place over one night. It happened. The movie basically happens in real time.
One night going into the morning. So at least it's
yeah.
All right. So we're still in this scene, this fight between Mrs. Voorhees and Alice. And it's going on for a long time. And they finally and she's got this one scene in where she makes it to like a food pantry. She closes the door. She locks it in there. And that's and then Mrs. Voorhees chops it down. That's reminiscent of The Shining.
Well, The Shining would be reminiscent of this, right? Because
no, Shining came out in like 1980. Okay, they came out the same year.
I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, they came
out. Well,
I
got.
So, yeah. So maybe it's not ripped off, but it's similar scenes.
Yeah.
But obviously, Shining has a more iconic thing. But finally, it gets to the point where they're at the lake. They're at Crystal Lake. They're on the shore, and they're just fighting back and forth. And Alice gets hold of the axe, and then here comes a slow-mo again. So this slow-mo was cool.
Yeah, Yeah.
As
I
opposed
was
to
like,
the beginning, you didn't like.
Yeah, I even said it like while we were watching. I was like, "This is fucking cool," and this is something that you never see, and I guess you never see it in a slasher movie. Like the main character decapitating the person that's terrified them the whole movie.
Yeah, because this is before even Halloween 2, so the whole sequel, the idea of franchises hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So they killed their, I wouldn't say protagonist, but their killer.
The main bad guy.
The main bad guy in this movie. But it's a real cool slow-mo shot of her just going at, it's a machete.
I can't remember what it was. They picked up so many different things.
True.
And
they're going at it with a paddle.
Yeah, there was a paddle there for a second.
She's throwing like cereal boxes at her.
She cuts the paddle in half. That was another dumb thing in this movie is people they like walk backwards weird. I mean, it's like, they're all like Andrew Hilbert in in Dead by Daylight. That's how people run away from the killer in this movie.
Yeah, it's not they don't make the smartest choices, but they're also not the dumbest teenagers that I've seen.
Yeah. She literally cuts this girl, her head off.
Yeah,
so.
She's a badass final girl.
Yeah.
So
you don't see little Laurie Strode cutting off.
Does not cut off Michael Myers. Thankfully, right? Thankfully. So she slow mo, and then you could see the terror, the look of being scared on Mrs. Voorhees' face, and then we just see the face, the head being chopped off.
Yeah.
Right. That special effect is
it's
really
done
good.
well. Yeah, it's done well.
Even for the time, like, because we're like, what, almost 40 years, 41 years later, it still looks great.
Yeah. We were cheering. All of us were cheering when we saw
watching
that.
Yeah, we all watched it together. And then, so Mrs. Voorhees is dead, and instead of going, she does make the dumb choice of not, earlier she jumped into the Jeep, Alice did, but she didn't drive away because there was the dead body in there. And then at this point, she could have gone back to the Jeep, but she doesn't. She gets instead into a canoe and goes out into the middle of the Crystal Lake, and then proceeds to fall asleep until the morning. Now these shots are beautiful, like of the nature shots and the foliage and all that, and the water
paired with
the
really cheesy music.
And this is the music that I was talking about earlier, like
tranquil, cheesy music.
Because they were trying to put you at ease.
Yeah.
To the point where something's happening. But then what I thought was cool, even though I knew it was coming, and did you know something?
I knew. I had seen that.
Oh, because you've seen the scene
somewhere. Yeah, I had seen the scene.
It's in pop culture. You can't really get rid of it, and other places have done it up, and there's even posters of it. With that,
because it's a really cool scene.
Yeah,
but
one cool thing that I think Cunningham did was that he went past that point where you're like, okay, this has gone on too long. I don't think anything's gonna happen. So he kind of wrote it out, and then that's when you see Child Michael jumping out of the water.
Child Jason
jumping out of the water. It's always Michael for me. Jumping out of the water, grabbing her, and bringing her down into the water. And he's got a deformed face and all that. And also, we didn't mention earlier the reason why, when she was doing her soliloquy, Mrs. Voorhees says that she killed the camp counselors back in 1958 because they let Michael Myers... Oh, Jesus Christ. Jason Voorhees. I'm diseased. My brain is...
You cannot edit that out. You have to leave that in.
My brain is just Michael all the time. No, they let Jason drown back in 1958, and that's why she's been the one doing all the killings every time they try to open it up. So then at this point we see Jason coming out of the water and bringing her into the water, and then we find out that it's a dream. And she's in the hospital, and it plays out like that. There's sequels, obviously, 10, 11 of them. But it doesn't make sense to me how there are sequels. Because he's definitely dead in the first movie.
Well, maybe it's not a dream, because they...
But they said that they pulled you out of the canoe.
Yeah, they pulled... No. They said I pulled you out of the water. So, maybe they're thinking her canoe capsized. She washed up on the water... on the shore, and then they're saying there was no little boy or whatever. And I think a cooler route, like in an alternate reality, there would be like a stronger. I haven't seen any of these sequels, so I'm totally talking out my ass. But I just see a big ass dude in a hockey mask or a burlap sack or something, and it's very different from like a little kid trying to drown her. I mean, the little kid trying to drown her, that's fucking cool. That's creepier than your average slasher. That's basically a Michael Myers knockoff.
Yeah.
Right. So just give him a big white mask and have him holding something sharp and kill people. Okay. Or it would have been cool if it was like this kid that comes out of the water and drags people into the water and drowns them. That would be cooler.
Yeah, I wish that it wasn't a dream. I wish they had gone for it and just left it there, because the actress does come back for part 2, but not in any major way. She's, spoiler alert, she's killed off pretty quickly. And the reason why that happens is because she actually, after this movie was released, she got a stalker.
Oh, God.
And the stalker was sending her letters or whatever, and, she got very afraid for her life. And then what ended up happening is the stalker made their way into her life without her knowing it. She met somebody new and just thought it was a random person, didn't realize it was a stalker.
Whoa.
And that person integrated themselves into her life and ended up putting a gun to her head. And she had to talk him down from killing her.
Yo, that's scarier than this whole movie.
It's fucking crazy, right?
Yeah.
So she was like, I don't know if at this point, when part 2 came out, if that had already happened or if it was in the midst of happening, but she didn't want to be part of the series anymore. The sequels don't really. There's like 3 movies that have the same character kind of in them, but they're all the same character but played by different people in 3 movies. So the series itself has peaks and valleys, but I think it's there's definitely some movies worth watching in there.
Well, the other thing is I'm just wondering, it's okay. So Jason Voorhees is the killer, like in the second and third movies, or is he an undead zombie? Because I feel like he's undead because he drowned.
Yeah, the same thing goes with Michael Myers at this point. It's like, is he supernatural? Like, you just have to release.
But he has to be supernatural from the get-go, because the lore is that he drowned and his mother was killing people. So if he's killing people,
yeah, he's definitely. We're gonna like. It's,
I kind of now I want to know.
He's definitely dead in part 1.
Yeah.
So anything after that, it's like he's either zombie or supernatural, or like not a ghost, right? But either zombie or supernatural. But how could he be a zombie if he was dead as a child?
How is he a zombie man?
Yeah.
How did he keep growing?
This is bullshit.
I know, but that's interesting. Like, it's kind of interesting. I want to know, what's the story of, did he go to college? Did he like get, he had to start lifting at some point.
Barely speak. He can't even speak. The only words that he speaks throughout the whole series are in the flashbacks of this movie when he's drowning. The rest of the series doesn't talk, so he doesn't.
Well, same thing. Michael Myers says the same thing in Halloween.
Yeah, 1. Michael Myers, he doesn't speak. So one thing.
He does in the Rob Zombie.
Moving on. All right. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about was that the editing took 10 weeks.
Yeah, it was like they didn't even have an editor. Like, this movie would
Star Wipe.
So much better, man. If it had lost 15 minutes, this would have been like much better, I think.
Was it? I forget. Was it just the cuts were bad?
Yeah, or the things that they would focus on were just like, cut this shit out of here. Like, the weird guy, Ralph. So there's this guy that you're supposed to think he's the town drunk. He's the town lunatic, basically. Mm-hmm. And he comes over and he's like, oh, you're all doomed to die, like you were saying. And then he rides off on a bicycle, and they take like 15 seconds to show you him walking away from the girl that he just kind of harassed, walking up to his bike, getting on his bike, and then driving away on his bike. It's like,
and he wasn't too sure on that bike, right? Like
it was like, it was weird, and there's a lot of stuff like that. People walking, people walking in the dark, people going from place to place. It's like you don't need 20 seconds of someone walking. You can do the same thing in 5 seconds.
Okay, so overall, what did you think of this movie? With all its faults, with all the good stuff, what did you think of it?
Yeah, it's definitely a very...
We're going to go rate it in a little bit.
Faulted, it has its faults. It's not a perfect movie, but I did enjoy it. Especially, I like watching these kinds of movies with you because I don't know what kind of tolerance I would have for this type of thing. I feel like I'd be really bored if I was by myself, but we're like watching and like cheering at the kills.
Talking shit about it.
Me making fun of the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And we're in an environment where we're not watching like a big dramatic thing where if I were watching like Hereditary and with a group and people are talking shit and going, oh wow, at the kills, that would be very irritating to me. Yeah. But these slasher movies they're pretty fun to watch with the group. And so like I do enjoy it. I do enjoy doing it that way if you have that option.
Yeah, it's a fun group movie
to
watch. I feel like I can see why it has its place in the horror pantheon, right? Because this was the beginning of Jason wasn't who he was. Obviously, he wasn't even in the movie.
Yeah,
like Jason as we know him wasn't in the movie.
Yeah,
and he is in part 2, but he doesn't get the mask until part 3 towards the end. But without one, you don't get the rest of that stuff. So it has my respect there. It has a lot of faults, but it has some creepy stuff, some cool scenes, some great special effects. I enjoy the music. So overall, I like this movie. Is it a movie that I would on my own watch? No, but I understand how people like it, and it became what it was. So what we do here is we rate the movie out of 5 upside down crosses. So what would you give the movie out of 5 upside down crosses?
I give it like 2.5 or 3, which is like basically like an average movie that is enjoyable.
So 2.5.
2.5 to 3.
No, the rate.
Well,
then
we round up. because I don't want to. I don't want to be that guy.
Well, I do have to put this down. You don't want to be the 2.5 star guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I agree. I'll agree with you there, and I'm really surprised because I thought you were gonna. We did shit on this movie.
Yeah,
but it has faults. But
it's a shitty movie. It's a bad movie, but it's fun to watch at points.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, and it has historical context. So I agree with you there. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. There's definitely some movies in the series that I would give more, particularly I think 3 and 6 and. Freddy vs. Jason is just fun to watch. It is also a shit movie, but that one with a group would kind of be cool.
So you're kind of really selling me on like wanting to keep watching these because, especially if they could edit them down. Like if there's a supercut, I know they did this with the shitty Star Wars movies where they're like, there's actually only like 30 minutes worth of good content per movie, and then they cut all 3 movies into an 1.5 hour movie. 1 hour and a half movie. I think they did that with The Hobbit too.
Okay.
And it's like I would want that for Friday the 13th. Because then I could just get all the cool kills, the whole series, and then I could get all the lore and all the inconsistencies, which are, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's interesting to think about because I remember like growing up as a kid, people talking about this kind of shit, and it was always like, oh no, like this killer, like he's like, he's like this underwater dude or whatever. Like, and I would just think about, man, that's really weird. Like I don't, because I never watched the movies, and these guys are like these invincible killers. Yeah, like iconic invincible. It's almost like Superman, right? Like except bad and more like that. The 14-year-old kid that comes over to hang out with your sister when you're, younger, and they talk to you about it when you're like 9, and you're like, oh my man, that sounds really cool and scary.
So now I will go ahead and after we've talked about it, and I feel like you're sorry for your sin.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and absolve you of your horror sin. And now, for this to take effect, for you to be fully absolved, you will need to. I'm going to assign you 3 movies, and you need to watch these movies. You have homework.
Okay.
This is how confession works. You have to be contrite, and you have to do your confession, and then you have to be absolved. In order for the absolution to go through, you have to watch these movies. And I'm gonna tell you some movies that I think are not similar to Friday the 13th, but they are slashers. Some are proto slashers, and but I think they're just really fun, and I think you'll enjoy them. If not, even just to talk shit about them. But first is Black Christmas, the original, which all these we've already talked about. You haven't seen, which is a great movie, and that was kind of like a prototype for Halloween.
Yeah.
And then Peeping Tom, which is even earlier, is like in the 60s. That's an English one. And then Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Okay,
is great.
I do want to watch the first one and the last one, and then Peeping Tom. I've heard of it. I probably watched a thing on it, but I'm not super familiar. But I've been wanting to watch Black Christmas. So.
Yeah, Peeping Tom is like this sleazy slasher, right? He's a photographer. And the cool thing is, it's not a whodunit. He's a killer. It's like if you were following Jason or Michael for all his kills. So the suspense is in if he's going to get caught or not.
That's odd.
Yeah.
But that's kind of cool, though.
Yeah, it's real cool. And it actually shows some kills, and it's kind of tawdry because he's a photographer for like movies or maybe lingerie.
Fashion magazine or something.
That sort of thing. So... so you just watch those movies, and then you're obviously going to come back, and we'll talk about them in another movie that you haven't seen.
Oh, sounds good. No, this was good. This was fun.
All right, Zach. So tell the people where they can follow you if they wanted to, what cool projects you got coming up.
Well, you can follow me at ChappyZach on Twitter. I think I'm the same thing on Instagram. And, we've... Miguel and I are working on comic book stuff. And some of that stuff will be in House of Blood, issue 2. Whenever that comes out, I have no idea, but it is going to come out at some point, and I'll be shouting out about it from the rooftops everywhere. So you'll be able to see that. And Miguel, you'll probably mention it at some point. If you're listening to this, you follow Miguel. So
if you are really into comics, Zach is really into comics, and he's writing some great stuff, so you should definitely follow him and see the projects he's got coming out, because I've seen like issue 1's done. It's just you need to figure out how you're going to publish it, which route you got some interest. So you should definitely follow him to see when he drops that. The art is amazing. The storytelling is amazing. We got one coming out pretty soon, so follow him. You can follow me at Miguel_Myers_ATX on Twitter and also on Instagram. I don't do Facebook anymore. You shouldn't either. And then we will talk to you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.